Before the chronicles of Rome, before the philosophers of Greece, before even the pyramids of Giza took their final form, humanity etched its first great story onto tablets of clay. We often think of our foundational myths, the tales of wandering heroes and divine conflicts, as products of a more recent antiquity. But what if I told you that the blueprint for the hero's journey, the first existential crisis ever recorded, was written down over 4,000 years ago? This is the story of Gilgamesh. But it is more than a mere epic. It is humanity's earliest surviving meditation on our most profound questions. What does it mean to live a good life? How do we confront the terror of our own mortality? And where, in a world governed by indifferent gods and the certainty of death, can we find true immortality? Today, we journey back to the dawn of civilization to uncover the philosophical heart of the Epic of Gilgamesh and explore why this ancient poem still speaks to the core of the human condition. Our story begins in Uruk, a jewel of ancient Sumer, the land we now call Iraq. Uruk was not just a city. It was a testament to human ambition, a metropolis of baked brick and towering ziggurats, all encircled by a magnificent wall. And ruling over this domain was a king, unlike any other, Gilgamesh. The tablets describe him not as a mere man, but as a being caught between two worlds. He was 2/3 divine and 1/3 mortal, possessing the strength and beauty of the gods, but cursed with the fleeting lifespan of a human. This duality raged within him. His divine blood fueled a limitless ambition and a superhuman power that made him a warrior without equal. He was the one credited with building Uruk's legendary walls, a monumental feat that secured his city and broadcast his greatness to the world. Yet, for all his might, Gilgamesh was not a beloved ruler. He was a tyrant. His power was a storm that battered his own people. He ruled with an iron fist, his whims becoming law, his desires becoming burdens upon his subjects. The tablets speak of his arrogance, of him taking workers for grueling projects and asserting his right to sleep with brides on their wedding night. He was a king whose divine strength had severed his connection to human empathy. The people of Uruk, trapped within the very walls he built for their protection, suffered in silence until they could bear it no longer. In their despair, they cried out to the heavens, praying to the gods for a force that could temper the rage of their king. The gods heard their plea. In their wisdom, they decided not to destroy Gilgamesh, but to balance him. They conceived of a counterweight, a being who could match the king in strength and spirit. And so, from the clay of the earth, they created Enkidu. Enkidu was not born in a city. He was a child of the wilderness, a creature of pure, untamed nature. His body was covered in matted hair. He ran with the gazelles, and he drank from the same waterholes as the wild herds. He knew nothing of laws, kings, or hierarchies. His heart beat in rhythm with the primal forces of the world. He was humanity in its original state, a spirit untouched by the constructs of civilization. But his wild harmony could not last. Hunters from Uruk found their traps sprung and their prey freed. They saw this wild man as a threat to their livelihood, a disruption to the established order. They brought their complaint to King Gilgamesh, who, intrigued by this untamed force, devised a plan not of violence, but of seduction. He sent for Shamhat, a temple priestess wise in the ways of civilization and the arts of love. Her mission was to transform Enkidu, to bridge the gap between his world and the world of humanity. She found him at his watering hole, and through her gentle presence, she introduced him to a reality he had never known. For 7 days and 7 nights, he stayed with her, learning of touch, of conversation, of cooked food and strong wine. In this time, a profound change occurred. The wildness in his eyes softened, his mind opened to human thought, and his body began to shed its rugged exterior. The beast was becoming a man. When he finally attempted to return to his former life, the animals he once called family now fled from him. He had been irrevocably changed. He no longer belonged to the wild. His destiny now lay in the world of men, and Shamhat guided him on the path to the great city of Uruk, where his fated encounter with Gilgamesh awaited. For Enkidu, the city of Uruk was a sensory onslaught. He, who had only known the open plains and quiet forests, was now surrounded by towering stone, bustling markets, and the fearful, oppressed faces of its citizens. He heard whispers of the king's abuses and felt the tension of a populace living under the thumb of tyranny. It was here he learned of Gilgamesh's most egregious act, the right of the first night. To Enkidu, whose heart was still guided by a natural sense of justice, this was an unforgivable violation. How could a king, a shepherd of his people, act with such disrespect? A fire was lit within him. He knew it was his mission to confront this tyrant and stand in his path. The moment came when Gilgamesh approached the door of a wedding chamber to claim his privilege. Enkidu, a formidable presence, blocked his path. The clash that followed was not merely a fight between two men. It was a collision of worlds. Wild, untamed nature versus the unyielding force of civilization. The battle was titanic. The tablets say the doorposts of the city shattered, and the walls trembled as these two equals unleashed their full power. Neither could gain an advantage. Blow for blow, they were perfectly matched. But then, in the heat of this epic struggle, something shifted. As they grappled, their fury gave way to a dawning recognition. Gilgamesh, for the first time in his life, saw in another being a true equal, someone who did not bow in fear, but met his strength with equal force. He saw a soul who could understand his own loneliness. And Enkidu saw beyond the tyrant to the powerful but isolated man beneath, a man searching for meaning. The duel ended not with a victor and a vanquished, but with an embrace. An unbreakable bond was forged in the crucible of combat. From that moment, Gilgamesh and Enkidu became inseparable friends, two halves of a single soul. Their journey together would lead them to challenge monsters and defy the gods, forever marking the course of human storytelling. With the fire of his new friendship, Gilgamesh's ambition was kindled anew. The life of a king in Uruk, a life of power and luxury, now felt hollow. The void inside him demanded more than just ruling. It demanded a legacy. He yearned for a glory so great that his name would be sung for all eternity. And so, he conceived of an undertaking of unprecedented audacity, a journey to the forbidden cedar forest to slay its fearsome guardian, the monstrous Humbaba. The cedar forest was a sacred realm, a place reserved for the gods. Its ancient trees were said to touch the heavens, and its depths were guarded by a creature of immense power. Humbaba was a being engineered by the gods to protect this domain, a monster whose roar was a flood, whose breath was fire, and whose gaze was death itself. To even enter the forest was blasphemy. To challenge Humbaba was suicide. The elders and priests of Uruk begged Gilgamesh to abandon his reckless quest. They warned him of divine retribution and certain doom, but the king's heart was set, his pride unyielding. Enkidu, who knew the true power of Humbaba from his time in the wild, hesitated. He understood they were not just challenging a beast, but the very order of the cosmos. Yet, his loyalty to Gilgamesh was absolute. Seeing the unshakable resolve in his friend's eyes, he agreed to stand by his side. Together, they made offerings to Shamash, the sun god, the patron of justice and travelers. Impressed by their courage, Shamash granted them his protection, though he warned of the grave dangers ahead. With weapons in hand and a divine blessing upon them, the two heroes left the safety of Uruk and ventured into the unknown, their journey a testament to the power of their bond. The path was grueling. They crossed endless deserts, scaled towering mountains, and navigated treacherous rivers. With each hardship, their friendship deepened. Enkidu, with his knowledge of nature, guided and sustained them, while Gilgamesh, with his relentless drive, pushed them ever forward. During the nights, Gilgamesh was plagued by terrible dreams, visions of falling mountains and fiery skies. Enkidu interpreted these omens, seeing them as both warnings of the danger and promises of their eventual success with the help of Shamash. Finally, they stood at the threshold of the cedar forest. The air itself grew thick, heavy with a supernatural energy. A profound silence hung beneath the canopy of the colossal trees, which seemed to watch them with ancient wisdom. This was not a place for mortals. Deep within the forest, a roar like cracking thunder announced the arrival of the guardian. Humbaba emerged, a figure of pure terror. Its presence warped the very air around it. For a moment, even Gilgamesh's courage wavered. But, calling upon the name of his friend, he charged forward. The battle was cataclysmic. Humbaba attacked with the ferocity of a natural disaster, but the heroes fought as one, their movements synchronized. At a critical moment, Gilgamesh cried out to Shamash, who answered by sending 13 great winds that swirled around Humbaba, trapping him and blinding him. Seeing their chance, Enkidu struck a mighty blow, and together they brought the monster to its knees. Defeated, Humbaba pleaded for his life, promising to be Gilgamesh's eternal servant. He warned them that to kill him would be to invite the wrath of the gods. Gilgamesh hesitated, but Enkidu, pragmatic and fearful of the monster's potential for future terror, urged his friend to show no mercy. With one final decisive strike, Gilgamesh ended Humbaba's life. The forest fell silent. They had achieved the impossible. They had won eternal glory. But as they felled the sacred cedars to take back to Uruk, a shadow of foreboding fell upon them. They had defied the divine order, and they knew, deep in their hearts, that the gods would demand a price. The victory over Humbaba brought Gilgamesh the fame he craved, but fate is a scale that must always be balanced. When mortals overreach, the gods restore the balance. The divine council convened, and Enlil, the chief god angered by the death of his servant Humbaba, decreed that a price must be paid. For their transgression, one of the two heroes had to die, and the one they chose was Enkidu. A mysterious illness, a curse from the heavens, took hold of him. The vibrant, powerful man who had wrestled with Gilgamesh now lay weak and feverish. The strength that had rivaled a god-king was mercilessly drained away. In his delirium, he cursed his fate. He cursed Shamhat for bringing him into the world of men, a world of pain, loss, and mortality. But as death approached, his rage subsided into a sad resignation. He recounted his great adventures with Gilgamesh and accepted his destiny. Gilgamesh watched, helpless, as his other half, his dearest friend, faded from the world. For the first time, the great king who had never feared any monster felt the cold, paralyzing grip of true terror, the terror of mortality. When Enkidu finally drew his last breath, a devastating silence fell. The mighty king of Uruk, the conqueror of Humbaba, collapsed, his heart shattered by a grief no battle could ever inflict. The funeral was the grandest Uruk had ever seen, but for Gilgamesh, it was meaningless. He could not accept that this was the end. If Enkidu, a man as strong as a force of nature, could be extinguished so easily, what did that mean for him? The thought of his own inevitable demise became an obsession. Consumed by sorrow and a desperate fear of death, Gilgamesh made a radical choice. He cast off his royal robes, donned the rough skins of a hunter, and abandoned his throne. He became a wanderer, a man on a new quest, not for glory, but for eternal life. His journey took him to the very ends of the earth, through desolate wildernesses and past supernatural guardians. He was no longer a king, but a man haunted by the ghost of his friend and the specter of his own death. His quest had one destination, the home of Utnapishtim. According to legend, Utnapishtim and his wife were the only mortals to have ever been granted immortality by the gods. They were the sole survivors of a great, world-ending flood sent to wipe out humanity. After finding him, Gilgamesh, in desperation, begged the wise old man to reveal the secret to eternal life. Utnapishtim looked upon the weary king with pity and told him the story of the flood. He explained how the gods, angered by humanity's noise, decided to destroy them all. But one god, Ea, secretly warned Utnapishtim and instructed him to build a massive ark to save his family and the seeds of all living things. After the world was washed clean, the gods, regretting their destruction, rewarded Utnapishtim for his obedience by granting him and his wife eternal life. The lesson was clear. His immortality was a unique gift, a consequence of a singular event, not a prize to be won. Still, Utnapishtim offered Gilgamesh a challenge. "If you wish to conquer death," he said, "first conquer its cousin, sleep. Stay awake for 7 days and 7 nights. Gilgamesh accepted, but the exhaustion of his long journey overwhelmed him, and he fell into a deep slumber. When he awoke, Utnapishtim showed him 7 loaves of bread in progressing states of decay, one for each day he had slept, a simple, undeniable proof of his human frailty. Defeated, Gilgamesh prepared to return to Uruk, resigned to his mortal fate. But as he departed, Utnapishtim's wife took pity on him and revealed one last secret. At the bottom of the deepest ocean grew a miraculous plant that could restore a person's youth. With a final surge of hope, Gilgamesh tied stones to his feet, plunged into the abyss, and retrieved the thorny plant. He began his long journey home, his prize in hand. But on the way, he stopped to bathe in a cool pool of water. As he did, a serpent, drawn by the plant's fragrance, slithered out and stole it. As the snake disappeared, it shed its old skin, visibly rejuvenated. Gilgamesh watched, helpless, as his last hope for immortality vanished before his eyes. And in that moment of ultimate loss, he finally understood. Immortality was not for him. Death was inevitable. Gilgamesh returned to Uruk, not with the eternal life he sought, but with something far more valuable: wisdom. As he stood before the gates of his city and gazed upon the colossal walls he had built, his perspective shifted. For the first time, he saw them not just as a symbol of his power, but as a testament to his existence, a mark left on history that would outlive him. He had finally understood the lesson Utnapishtim had tried to teach him. The immortality he had been chasing was a phantom. True immortality, the only kind available to mortals, was not found in an endless life for the body, but in the works and deeds one leaves behind for future generations. As he walked the streets of his city, he saw the faces of his people, the life that thrived within the walls he had created. He realized that glory was not in conquering monsters or defying gods. It was here, in building a community, in creating something that would last, in the stories that would be told long after his body had returned to dust. His name would live on, not because he escaped death, but because he had lived a life of such magnitude that it had to be remembered. Gilgamesh climbed the great wall of Uruk and looked out over his kingdom as the sun set. He had traveled to the edge of the world and back. He had faced gods and monsters. He had lost his dearest friend and confronted his deepest fears. And now he was at peace. He had accepted his place in the great cycle of life and death. He had found his true immortality, not in cheating destiny, but in the enduring legacy of his story. The Epic of Gilgamesh is not just an ancient adventure. It is a profound philosophical reflection on the human condition. It teaches us that our confrontation with mortality is what gives life its meaning. Our friendships give it depth, our creations give it permanence, and our stories give it a life beyond our own. The marks we leave on the world, and in the hearts of others, are the truest form of immortality we can ever hope to achieve. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of ancient philosophy. If you found this story meaningful, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel for more explorations into the timeless wisdom of the past. Thank you for watching.